Okay. So what I want to do today is I want to go over how do you protect. Oh. Does everybody have handouts?
I don't. Thank you.
Are you sure? Okay. So what we want to look at today are some strategies to help protect your creative endeavor, right? What we call your intellectual property. Many times you'll just say, well, it's just my art, right? But under the law, it actually has a very specific name, and because it has that specific name, it also means that it has a very specific value, okay? And it is a value that will last even after you have passed away, which is something very important for young artists to understand, because right now you might not ever think that you will ever die, right? That you are, as that movie was, Unbreakable, if you remember that movie, and the idea that, like, he would always live forever. Sometimes we feel that way, especially when we're younger, that nothing bad can ever happen. And so one of the things we have to keep in mind is that should something happen, there is still value in what you leave behind. And so you have to take care of that for the next generation, for whoever is going to be left with all this wonderful work that you have completed, okay? And for some artists, if they have family, this is something that you're going to leave behind for your children, and something that can be of value to them. So when your children get older, this is also a conversation that you need to have with them about the value of your artwork, okay? Not when they're 5, but when they're like 30. Because at 5, they just want to take their own crayons and paint all over it, right? And we don't want that to do, okay? So some of the handouts, these are all articles that I've written for Toon Boom magazine, which is that animation article. One that deals with copyrights, one that deals with trademark, online legal issues for animators, the idea of work for hire, and then contracts per se. And we're going to be doing contracts and negotiation next week. But these are just great little reference pieces for you. They're quick and easy writing, so just make sure you put it into your book as reference, okay? And then the last handout that we are going to be looking at is the non-disclosure agreement. Okay, so let's begin with the idea of copyright. So how many of you have copyrights? Why don't you have your hand up?
Because I feel like I'm still developing my body of work, and I don't have a collective that I have felt confident about.
Sending it where?
To be copyrighted?
To be copywritten. Okay, so myth number 1. Every single one of you has copyright. There is the difference between having a copyright and registering a copyright. Under the law, copyright is actually automatic. As soon as you create something, you have a copyright in it. Okay, and actually, you have a bundle of rights. It's not just one right, but it's 5 rights that you have with copyright. Okay? So the first thing is, what does the copyright, or what does it protect? It protects artistic, intellectual endeavor that's in a fixed, tangible format. Okay? Fixed, tangible format. That's the key. Ideas are not protectable. So sometimes a style of art is just an idea. Pablo Picasso may be the artist that is most known for Cubism, but he doesn't own it. Other artists can paint in that Cubist style. Okay? There is a contemporary artist called Romero Brito. He does this sort of pop Cubist type of artwork. I don't know if any of you have seen him. He's very bright colors, almost looks very childish in the type of artwork that he produces. Very high fashion now, believe it or not. So when you go to these malls, you'll actually see him in like luggage stores. They'll have cases with his artwork. But there are other artists who do something similar because it's considered that the style is not protectable. Okay? So anybody can paint your same style. They just can't say it's you. That's where fraud comes in with art. I watch a program on Sunday mornings called Sunday Morning. I've talked about them before, right? And they had this session about this artist. They say he's one of the world's best artists. He's a complete fraud. He paints other people's paintings, and not just any paintings. I mean, paintings that were worth millions of dollars, and he's sold them throughout the years and have made millions of dollars.
Do you paint them in the same style?
The exact replica. He forged them. So you saw this? Yeah, you saw it. Okay. So now here's the thing. The statute of limitations has passed, so they can't convict him of anything right now. Okay? So he got away with it. He got away with painting these forgeries and then selling them as originals. That's illegal. But he got away with it. He was that good that he fooled the art critics, the people who verified whether artwork was real or not.
So he said that they were buying the original artists. He didn't just make them himself and say it's him, right?
No, he did them himself, but put the artist's signatures. And he did all certain things, like some artists would do things to their frames, and he did the same thing that the artist did. Some artists used special brushes or knife strokes, and that's what he did to come up with the same exact way that artist painted.
How did he do the dating thing? Like, don't they have ways of dating the paint?
He had tricks for that too. It was very eye-opening to listen to this interview. But what does that mean? It means, unfortunately, that none of us are really originals, right? That anybody can copy our work and say that it was us who did it, even though it wasn't. Which means that we have to be very vigilant of what's out there under our name. Okay? Because even though people may paint in the same style or do the same kind of art, they're not us, right? They don't have our story. And that's what gives that added value to that particular piece of work, okay? But it does have to be a fixed, tangible format, a sculpture, a painting, ink on a skateboard, okay, a T-shirt. It can't just be, I have an idea of doing a series of skulls. That idea is not protectable, okay? Another way to see this is what happens in movies. Most movies, they're all the same plot, right? Somebody meets somebody, somebody loses somebody, somebody gets somebody back. It can be boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, boy. It doesn't matter. It's always the same kind of story. What makes it different, though, is the scenario, the setting where it's at, the type of characters that they might get involved, the language that it might be in. Those are what makes things different, right? So Romeo and Juliet. We had Romeo and Juliet from Shakespeare, and then we had what? West Side Story. West Side Story is based on Romeo and Juliet. That whole, when they're on the fire escape, that's the balcony scene of Shakespeare. It's Romeo and Juliet. That is the balcony scene. Okay? Romeo and Juliet, the animated movie version. Okay? Same story. The idea is the same. The idea is not protectable. The film itself becomes the protection. Your art itself becomes the protection. Now, this is what makes it interesting, because it means that the copyright that you have in your art is actually separate from the art itself. You can sell your art and retain the copyright. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because that means that even though that artwork is no longer in your possession, that copyright is going to allow you to do a few things. Okay? Because there are 5 rights that you have. The first right is the right of copying. You can make duplicates. You can make your original painting, and you can paint 100 based on that original if you want. You can change. Okay? You have a derivative right. You can take that original and you've now decided, you know what, I really like it, but I want it blue. The derivative right is also how you get your merchandising and your licensing right. Okay, so Justin did the picture of the skull. It's on paper. He wants to put it on a t-shirt. Because he owns the copyright on the print on paper, he has the derivative right that he can put on the t-shirt. That derivative right you can sell. You can license to manufacturers. Yes.
Kind of random question, but what if you were a sculptor and you did like a plan for a sculpture, but you didn't actually create that sculpture? Do you still retain copyright for the plans? How does that work?
Yeah, so a lot of, sometimes with sculpture, if it's very big, right, because there's different kinds of sculpture. There's clay sculpture, but there's also marble, right, where somebody is carving. Many times they will try to make sort of a miniature model so they know what it is that they're looking for. That miniature model is copyrighted. The big one's not copyrighted until it's done. It's not finished yet. It doesn't exist. Okay? But what happens? Translating it from the small to the big is still just an idea until it becomes the final product. Okay? So, right to make duplicates, right to a derivative work, right to display. This is what gives you the right to put your art up in galleries. Okay? Right to distribute. This is what gives you the right to actually sell it. And right to public performance. This is what gives you the right to do live art. So those are your 5 rights. And you know what? You can sell and split those 5 rights all different kinds of ways and make different kinds of money. You can split it by territory. Maybe you have one representative in the U.S. and another representative overseas who wants to do derivative works or make mugs or t-shirts or whatever, and you can separate those, right? Okay. Derivative rights are also what allows you to go from one medium to another. So if you're an author and somebody comes to you with an option to make a movie, you give them the derivative rights of the movie. But somebody else, you can give the derivative rights to create a play, for example. And with your artwork, you can give somebody the rights to use that artwork and then from there to create a song out of it. Okay, those are all different rights, all different pieces that then you can sell and move forward. Now, those rights are automatic. They're yours. So why do people register a copyright? Well, if somebody copies you and you want to sue them, the only way to get into a court of law is that you have to have a legitimate registered copyright. If you don't have a registered copyright, you can't take them to court. Okay? Is it a long process to copyright? No. Most people can do it online on their own. It costs $35 every time you want to copyright something. The Copyright Office does say that they need a specimen. And for most artwork, you're not going to send them the artwork, right? So what you are going to send them are photos. And you can just upload that directly and put it in. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get your copyright through if there's not a problem on it. Okay. Now here's the issue. Functional items. Clothing is a functional item. And under the law, you can't copyright clothing. So that's why poor fashion designers, when they make those beautiful dresses on Oscar night, the next day they are knocked off. There's no protection. Okay? It's a dress. It's considered something that has a function. Same with mugs and plates. So artists, there are some artists that do a lot of pottery, for example, or ceramics. They can't have the plate itself protected. The only thing that they can protect is the image that they put on the plate, or the pattern that they have for the plate. Okay. Patents are different. So you might hear, for example, a chair having a design patent. Okay? But that's not copyrightable. Because under the law, a chair is what? Functional. You can sit on a chair. A design patent is something very, very different, and you need a lot of money to get those protections. How long does a copyright last? It lasts the life of the creator plus 75 to 95 years. It varies. It varies whether you are an individual or a corporation.
I know that work for hire is a lot shorter compared to just being an individual copyright something. But
Well,
if you're an individual, does that date range change?
No.
Okay, I was
Right, but work for hire, if in your contract when you sign for work for hire, you have to see if they have a clause where you're assigning your copyrights to them. Because then you're not the author anymore. When you assign your copyrights to somebody else, they're the author, not you. Okay, and they have the right to then fill out the copyright registration with the U.S. Copyright Office, not you. Okay? So you really want to check that when you're doing a work for hire.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
I need you to answer this. So, say for instance, you get into a situation where you would assign or sell one of your rights, one of the copyrights. Could you then, if you decide that it's not a good situation, can you like revoke it?
That depends on the contract you signed. Okay? So if it's just a licensing right, then this happens a lot of times. Okay? So let's say you have a certain art. Michael's craft store comes and says, I love your painting and we want to make a series of beads using your painting. Okay? You say, okay, I'll license it for you. We're going to do sort of a temporary thing. Usually they'll do a 6-month run, see how that goes, and then they'll have an option in the contract for renewal. Okay? Most of the time those options are automatic unless you send them in writing that you don't want it renewed. And it will tell you right in the contract what you have to do to terminate it. Okay? Now that's different because that's a licensing right. That's different from assigning your copyright. Most of the time, those assignments in copyrights are permanent. What's happening now is that the copyright law has a little loophole. After 35 years, the original author can rescind the assignments. So you may have seen lately in the newspaper the guys from the Village People, the song YMCA, right? Well, they're able because, believe it or not, 35 years have passed since that song. He got back his copyrights. He got back the copyrights, yeah, because of the termination in the copyright law. And that's what's happening right now in the music industry. A lot of these artists from the 70s are exercising their termination right and getting their rights back from their music. So all these record labels are trying to renegotiate with them. Or that's another reason why you're going to see old music from the 70s that's no longer available because the author has taken back those rights. Okay? And it affects lots of things. It affects movies that are out there that may have used that music. It affects documentaries that are out there that may have used that music and are talking about the 70s. So there's a lot of things happening because of those termination rights that are hitting right now.
So is that something that's already applied in copyrights, or is that something that...
No, it's there. So in 35 years, if you want to rescind your copyrights to somebody that you gave it to, after 35 years, you can.
Is it automatic, or is that something you have to request?
No, you have to request it, right? You have to request it. And that's the other thing that you have to keep in mind. All of these rights, it's your responsibility to watch out for them. There is no IP police. Okay? When you hear about great art thefts and Interpol getting involved, that's a criminal. right? That's a criminal type of activity. But copyright per se is considered civil. Okay? It's about money. Now, two questions that we need to go through, because people will ask, well, I'm a prolific artist. I mean, you go to my home, you're going to see art everywhere. How do I register all that at $35 a pop? I mean, 100 paintings is now what? $3,500. That is, I don't have that money. I don't have money for my canvas. Right? Okay. So this is my suggestion to my clients. What you're going to register is what is considered your signature artwork. The artwork that goes on the brochure. The artwork that's on the website as soon as people open it. The artwork that goes into every exhibit in every gallery that you're at. That's on the postcard, right? That's on the t-shirt. In other words, it is the art that has the most exposure because it is the art that is most likely to be copied because it's out there, okay? That means that from a business standpoint, remember our business mind now, we have to be intentional about what? We're not going to let all of our art out everywhere. We're going to be strategic. I'm going to put that art out. I'm not putting these. These I can put on a website with a watermark, low resolution. People can then go and see my work at my studio. This is the artwork that I want associated with me. Okay? Now you do that for a couple reasons. Number one, if somebody copies your art, what can you get? What do you think?
Have copyrighted it?
With you have your art, somebody went, copied it.
You can get all of the printed pieces, but none of the money will be out of it.
Why not?
It's not legal. There's no legal copyright. It's not registered.
Yeah, but they made money off of it. Huh?
It may not even be worth it to pursue it.
That's the key. Let me explain to you the way it works. Somebody copies your work, you are entitled to actual profits. In the art world, that is a creative accounting term.